So Shanker Singham is with us again. He's a former advisor to the British Trade Secretary, as well as a former advisor to the United States Trade Representative. The Supreme Court is going to hear the case on Trump's tariffs. Lower courts have said he can't do it. He can't constitutionally do it. I've made the case that Congress gave him the authorization to do this in an emergency fashion back in the 70s. Congress voted on it. It was signed into law. The president has declared a fiscal emergency. I think Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, has made the public case we are in an emergency. I don't think $37 trillion in debt is not an emergency. I think it's a big emergency, not to mention China and their aggressiveness, the fentanyl crisis. I've gone through all of this. So the question is, do you think the Supreme Court comes down on the side of this being an emergency and Trump being in the right to impose tariffs to get it done?
Yeah, so I think that there are three things I would say about this. First of all, everyone needs to recognize that whatever the Supreme Court decides, the president does have other authorities in which to do the tariff act. There is Section 301, Section 338, and many other provisions of the Trade Act that he could use. So this may simply delay what he's going to do anyway. So the idea that the tariffs don't use Supreme Court rules, the tariffs go away completely, that's not reality. The second thing I'd say is the lower courts have basically said that the tariffs are effectively a tax and therefore they're subject to congressional authority. Trade policy is very much part of foreign policy. There are some countries like Australia and New Zealand that have ministries or departments of foreign affairs and trade, for example. So the idea that it's nothing to do with foreign policy is clearly wrong. And then finally, I would say that with regard to the economic emergency, again in our white paper, we've shown the cost of these distortions to the US economy. If you think about all those jobs being lost in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and steel mills closing because of China distortions, all of these things, and you say, well, that's not an economic emergency for the United States, I think that's quite a hard argument to make, given the scale of the effect of these distortions. I mean, we looked at a Korean distortion in one sector alone, and the cost to the US economy is half $1 trillion over the next 10 years. So that's just one sector in one distortion. So I think there's ample evidence that there is an economic emergency, that the failure of the trading system to deal with these distortions has created an emergency in the US, and by the way, in some other countries as well.